The SS Benjamin Noble was a Great Lakes lake freighter, otherwise known as a canaler. She was built in 1909 by the Detroit Shipbuilding Company, and she was 239 feet long. The term canaler for a ship was designed for use in what were then, at the time, the dimensions of the Welland Canal. But the SS Benjamin Noble was later converted by her owners for service out on the Great Lakes. The Benjamin Noble had a tonnage of 1,481 tons. She had a beam of 40 feet, a height of 18 feet, and for an engine she had a triple expansion steam engine. Her crew ranged from anywhere between 15 and 22 crew members at a time. The Benjamin Noble was unique for her ship design and for the lake freighters. This being because her stern cabins were actually elevated on the poop deck. Her bow cabins were also elevated on a forecastle deck as well. This actually meant that she would sit quite low in the water, meaning that her spar deck often got wet. Just like the SS Kamloops, the Benjamin Noble had the canaler title because of her 239-foot length, which meant that the ship was short enough to pass through the locks at the Welland Canal. The Welland Canal and locks are connected to Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, bypassing the Niagara Falls. There is a unique design about the Benjamin Noble noted here. The construction was the way her bulwark or rails surrounded her cargo deck. They were solid sides built with large scoopers or scuppers, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, to drain water off of the deck. This design was also meant so that water could be trapped on the deck, potentially making the ship more prone to rapidly taking on water if a hatch cover failed. In 1914, the country was in a major economic recession at the time, and the Great Lakes freighter business was also slow. Mr. Francombe, the owner of CTC, underbid a contract to carry railroad rails from Ashtabula, Ohio to Duluth. In order to avoid losing money on the contract, the shipment had to be moved in one trip. The master of the Benjamin Noble was Captain Johnny or John Eisenhart, a young and well-liked captain that had grown up around the Great Lakes. The newly married Captain Eisenhart was 31 years old, and he was the youngest captain on the Great Lakes, and the Noble was his first commission. Captain John Eisenhart's first delivery was a load of rails, and this was the first trip of the season and his first trip as a captain. For 6 days he watched as they loaded the rails one by one into the hold of his ship. The ship began sinking deeper and deeper into the water with each loaded rail. Probably as a new captain, it would have been difficult to stop the loading or refuse to take any more of the load without jeopardizing his career. At the time, there were no Coast Guard regulations in those days to keep a ship from being overloaded and leaving port. The captain was solely responsible for the safety of his crew and ship. So, that being said, the Noble was so overloaded that her anchors were partially submerged when they departed. They could not fit all the final rails from the final 2 rail cars, and they were left at the dock as the Noble departed. None of the Benjamin Noble's crew refused to sail on the Noble that day in April. They knew that if they did, there was quite a line of sailors without jobs looking to take their places. As amazed as the dock workers were at her departure, Captain Eisenhart assured everyone and his crew that he would hug the shore all the way to Duluth to avoid any severe weather or bad weather. Captain Eisenhart's plan to hug the shoreline from Ashtabula, Ohio, all the way to Duluth, his destination, worked for a good while, until he rounded the Devil's Island, where Lake Superior began to brew up a terrible northeastern storm, from which there was no lee in this part of the lake. The Benjamin Noble entered Lake Superior on April 25, 1914. Also bound with the Benjamin Noble for Duluth was the lumber steamer Norwalk. She trailed the Noble and eventually passed her on the 27th later that night. The Noble was following the Norwalk until around 3 a.m., when both ships were near Knife Island. At that time, a passing and well-known freighter, the Daniel J. Morrell, noticed the lights of one of the ships suddenly disappear in the waves and the storm. Perhaps, had she been able to anchor in the sheltered port of Duluth, the Benjamin Noble would have been saved. However, at a key moment in the storm, entry to the harbor was unnavigable after the South Pier torchlight blew out. Harbor laborer Stan Standen tried to reach the light to relight it, but was unfortunately blown into the canal and was lost. In the midst of the blinding snowstorm, crewmen on the other two ships thought that they saw the lights of the Benjamin Noble disappear, but they didn't know if that was true at that time because the visibility was very low. One sailor thought he saw the Noble turn into the seas before losing sight of her. These reports in the paper were equally confusing, however. One woman claimed she saw the Noble make it to Duluth and turn around because one of the entry lights was out. The lighthouse keeper in two harbors made a claim that he twice waved off an unidentified ship that was trying to make entry to the shelter of the harbor. However, in the morning, hatch covers, rafts, and other parts of the ship and debris washed ashore at Park Point, all from the Benjamin Noble. The Norwalk struggled into Duluth Harbor at 4:30 a.m. on April 28th. That afternoon, the hatch covers of the Noble were found washed ashore on a beach near Duluth. The next day, more wreckage was found, including her pilot house. On April 29th, 1914, it was reported that several crew members' remains were found on a sanded reef near Minnesota Reef. However, these reports are not completely confirmed. Being that this was the first trip for the Benjamin Noble, the captain had not given a complete crew list. Of the estimated crew members to be aboard the Benjamin Noble at the time, it ranged from anywhere between 16 to 20, possibly 22 crew members. However, the names of only 13 are known with complete certitude, and an additional 2 names are known with possibilities as being aboard the Benjamin Noble. These are their names, and where they were from. In the autumn of 2004, a shipwreck research team consisting of Jerry Elison, Craig Smith, Ken Merriman, and Randy Beebe were searching for the Robert Wallace. However, their side-scan sonar picked up the outlines of a different shipwreck. Randy Beebe described as, quote, the event. It was the last pass of the day, which was going to be the last day of the search season. We were just going to pull up the side scanner sonar and head in when we noticed a target on the screen. So right away we headed over there and investigated it more with the side scan sonar. And sure enough, we had a shipwreck. End quote. The team was expecting to find the Wallace. However, the ship they had found was made of steel. As the Wallace was a wooden ship, they were able to lower a camera into the cargo hold of the mysterious ship. They saw the holds of railroad rails, thus confirming that the wreck was the long-lost Benjamin Noble, as they saw its name as well. The Benjamin Noble was extremely damaged by the sinking. The ship lies upright in a trench made when it hit the bottom of Lake Superior. The bow end is covered in silt, and the aft half of the ship is buried in almost up to the level of the main deck of the ship, with the hull split just forward of the boiler room. The rear cabins of the Benjamin Noble are collapsed due to the weight of the water as the ship probably plunged quickly into the water, hitting the bottom of Lake Superior. The cargo hatches are also gone, exposing the cargo of the railroad rails. The rear mast has fallen, and scattered nearby are the ventilators and a lifeboat from the Benjamin Noble. What exactly happened to the SS Benjamin Noble is a mystery. However, we do know it was more than likely because of the severe storm that she was trying to weather and navigate in. She was also heavy laden and top heavy with the cargo of the railroad rails that she had as her cargo. Sinking and nosediving into the bottom of Lake Superior is more than likely what happened, whether that was a severe rogue wave or the Three Sisters type of scenario with 3 rogue waves that sunk the Benjamin Noble. Also, my thoughts on the reports of the Benjamin Noble trying to make port in Duluth or one of the harbors over in that area and being turned away because the pilot lights were being blown out because of the severity of the storm. There's so many factors that go into what exactly happened that night. But I'd love to hear your guys' guess as what happened to the Benjamin Noble. I think it's another notable ship that obviously is probably not well known to most people, but I definitely wanted to give its song sung here because the entire crew lost their lives on this ship as well. However, that will do it for this video, and I thank you so very much again for coming and visiting me on Songs of the Great Lakes for another ship video. Stay tuned. I look forward to the next one with you guys, and God bless you.